You are 19 years old, and you grew up listening to engines. Your father is an engineer on a harbor tug in Hamburg, and your childhood smells of diesel oil and river water. On Sundays, he takes you aboard and lets you stand in the engine room, and he teaches you the one article of faith he holds completely. Men lie. Engines never do. An engine tells you exactly what is wrong with it. You just have to listen. By 17, you are apprenticed as a diesel mechanic. By 19, it is 1941, and the posters are everywhere in the port city. Gray boats slicing through Atlantic swells, iron crosses, the smiling aces of the U-boat arm, the tonnage numbers printed like sports scores. The newspapers call them the Gray Wolves. Every boy on your street can name the top commanders the way boys elsewhere name footballers. And so you do not wait for the paper with the eagle. You volunteer. You choose the submarines yourself, with your own signature, believing every word of it. The clean war of the sea, machines against machines, no villages in it. Remember that signature. You will be paying it off for the rest of your life. Your mother cries. Your father does not try to stop you. He knows the difference between advice and wind. He gives you the small, worn spanner from his own toolbox, polished by 30 years of his hand, and says only, "Listen to the engines, and come back and tell me if the sea is what you think it is." It is not. But it takes 2 years for you to find that out. Training at Kiel, then Pilau, diving drills, damage control, escape tanks, and your first lesson in what a U-boat actually is. It is not a warship. It is a steel pipe, 67 meters long, in which 51 men live pressed together like cartridges in a magazine. One toilet for all of them, bunks shared in shifts and never cold, fresh bread that grows white beards of mold in a week, and everything, coated in the same film of diesel and damp. On the surface, it rolls like a barrel and soaks every man on the bridge. Submerged, it becomes something else entirely, a held breath. You are assigned to the diesel room, the loudest place in the loudest machine, and it feels like home, because it is the only part of this steel pipe that speaks your father's language. The chief machinist is Brandt, 35 years old, merchant marine before the war. Forearms like mooring lines, almost wordless. He watches you work for a week before he speaks to you at all. Then he gives you the entire philosophy of the trade in 4 words, and they become the law you live under. Quiet hands, loud thoughts. Think anything you like, he means. Be terrified, pray, curse, but the hands stay slow and precise, because down here, panic travels through hands. A dropped wrench under depth charging is a signal flare. A rushed valve is a flooded compartment. In the years to come, you will watch that rule hold a crew together at 200 meters, and you will understand that it was never advice about tools. And there is Emil. Emil is the hydrophone operator, the ears of the boat, a pale, freckled 20-year-old from Dresden who has never seen the sea before the Navy, and who turns out to have the finest hearing in the flotilla. In his headphones, the ocean is not empty. It clicks, whistles, sings. He can tell a destroyer from a corvette by the rhythm of its screws. He claims he can tell whether a freighter is loaded or riding empty. Off watch, he deals scat with a deck of cards so worn they feel like cloth. And he has one iron ritual. No hand is ever abandoned. Alarm, crash dive, depth charges. The cards are laid face down, and when it is over, the hand is finished. The game continues, Emil says, every single time, dealing on an ammunition crate while the boat still trembles. Otherwise, it means they interrupted us. Your first patrols in 1942 are the tail end of what the old hands call the happy time. And the happiness is real. And that is the most uncomfortable thing you will ever have to admit about yourself. The boat works. The engines sing under your quiet hands. Tonnage accumulates on the conning tower in white numbers. There is a band on the pier at Saint-Nazaire and cognac in the mess, and you are 19 years old and part of the most feared weapon on the ocean. You believed the posters, and for 1 year the sea seems determined to prove the posters right. Then comes the night the arithmetic gets a voice. A convoy attack, on the surface, in the dark. 2 torpedoes, 2 hits. You hear them through the hull from the diesel room, a doubled thud like a fist on a door, and the boat cheers. Later, withdrawing, the captain lets the off-watch men up to the bridge in pairs, and you come up into the cold and see your work. A tanker is burning from one horizon of herself to the other. The sea around her is burning too, a lake of fire on black water. And across that water, thin and impossible, human voices, men in the water, among the flames, where no boat can go and yours is not permitted to try. The standing orders are explicit, and the war is what it is, and there are 41 of you in a steel pipe that any escort would gladly split open. You stand on the bridge with your quiet hands gripping the rail, and you do the sum you have been avoiding for a year. Tonnage is cargo, and cargo is ships, and ships are men. Stokers and greasers and engineers, men who listen to engines, men exactly like your father. There are no villages in the sea war. There are only crews. You go below when your minute is up, and you do not say anything, and Brant looks at your face once and does not say anything either. And that night Emile deals the cards, and for the first time you cannot remember what game you are playing. 30,000 Allied merchant sailors will not come home from that ocean. Remember that number. In a moment, I will give you the other one. In the spring of 1943, the sea turns over like a card. It happens in weeks. Suddenly, the aircraft are everywhere. Long range, carrier-borne, appearing out of cloud with no warning. Suddenly, the escorts hunt in coordinated packs, and their radar sees your periscope, your conning tower, your breath. The Bay of Biscay, your own front door, becomes a shooting gallery. Boats you know stop answering the flotilla's radio calls. Not 1, not 2. In that single May, 41 boats and their crews. The band still plays on the pier, but now it plays to gaps. And then it is your turn under the hammer, and you find out what the steel pipe is really for. An escort catches your boat shadowing a convoy south of Iceland. Crash dive. And then it begins. The sound that everyone had described to you and no description touches. The destroyer's sonar searching. A thin metallic ping traveling through the water and through the hull and through the fillings of your teeth. Ping. A pause in which 51 men do not breathe. Ping. Each one is a question, and the question is, are you there? And you stand at your silenced diesels, electric motors barely turning, revolutions counted 1 by 1. In socks, because shoes are noise. In a boat where the ventilation is shut down, and the temperature climbs past 40, and the air is already going sour. And you keep your hands quiet, quiet, quiet on the metal, while your thoughts scream loud enough to be heard in Canada. When the pattern of pings shortens, you hear the screws pass overhead, a freight train through water. Then the charges. A depth charge does not explode beside you, it explodes inside you. The sea slams the hull like a bell, the lights burst, glass and cork rain down in the dark. The boat is thrown sideways and down, gauges shatter, a packing gland weeps a thin jet of the Atlantic that in the emergency lighting looks black. Somewhere forward, a young seaman starts to whimper, high and rhythmic, and you hear Brant's voice in the darkness, not loud, almost gentle, deadlier than any shout. Quiet hands. And the whimpering stops, because the whole boat is holding on to those 2 words like a rail. 6 hours. 210 meters. Deeper than the hole is promised to survive, the steel groaning around you in long wail notes as the ocean tests every rivet. Charges and patterns, then silence, then the ping again, patient as arithmetic. 6 hours of standing in the dark with your father's spanner in your fist like a rosary, listening to the engines that cannot lie. This seal is holding. That bearing is running hot. We are alive. We are alive. We are still alive. When the destroyer finally loses the scent and the captain brings the boat up in the small hours, the crew climbs to the bridge 2 at a time just to breathe, and the night air off the North Atlantic tastes so sweet that men laugh out loud, quietly, like drunks. Emil sits down on the ammunition crate, unfolds last night's hand, and finishes the game. Otherwise, it means they interrupted us. You have never loved a human ritual more. That is the pattern of 1943 and 1944. Not battle, but huntedness. The boat spends its patrols submerged like a grudge, surfacing at night to charge batteries with every lookout's neck on a swivel. You stop believing in tonnage. The word the crew uses now is simpler. Durchkommen, getting through. The posters do not mention getting through. In the autumn of 1944, in Biscay, an aircraft finds you on the surface at dusk. The boat lives, barely, but a cannon shell splinter finds your shoulder on the way down the conning tower hatch, and after the hospital at Lorient, the flotilla surgeon writes words on a form that take you off sea duty. Instructor detail, training division, the Baltic. You argue. Brandt, who has seen the shoulder, tells you not to be a romantic. Someone has to teach the boys to keep their hands quiet. Go and do it properly. Emil deals one last hand the night before you leave and, when you lose, grins and pockets the matchsticks. We'll play the return match when you're back aboard. The game continues. The boat sails without you in November into the North Atlantic, with a new man standing at your diesels. She does not come back. No distress call, no survivors, no wreck ever charted. Just the word that swallowed so many boats by then that the flotilla had a rubber stamp for it. Missing. 51 men. Brandt with his quiet hands. Emil with his miracle ears, 22 years old, holding somewhere in his kit a deck of cards with an unfinished return match in it. For weeks you tell yourself what every transferred man tells himself, that you would have made no difference, that the sea does not check crew lists. And it is all true, and none of it helps, because guilt is not an engine and does not respond to reason. You were moved off the boat by a splinter and a signature. The man who replaced you had a mother too. There is no arithmetic for this. You stop looking for one, eventually. It takes about 30 years. Here is the other number, the one I promised. Of roughly 40,000 men who served in the U-boat arm, 30,000 did not come home. 3 in 4. No service in that entire world war. No army, no air force, on any side, paid a higher share. The clean war of the posters, machines against machines, turned out to be the deadliest place a man could stand. You believed the sea war had no villages in it, and you were right. And that was exactly the horror. It had no shore at all, no witnesses, no graves. The sea does not mark where it keeps them. The end reaches you in a Baltic training base in May 1945. Flags down, boats scuttled or surrendered, a brief British captivity that is mostly lists and waiting. In 1946, you walk back into Hamburg past kilometers of ruin from the Great Firestorm, and you find your parents alive in a cellar with a stovepipe through the window. A mercy so enormous you have to sit down on the rubble outside for a while before you can knock. Your father has aged 10 years and his tug is at the bottom of the harbor. The first thing he asks, before food, before anything, is the question he sent you off with 5 years ago. So, is the sea what you thought it was? No, you say. He nods slowly, unsurprised, and pours you a drink of something terrible. And that single syllable is the entire conversation you will ever have with him about the war. And it is, between two engineers, completely sufficient. You spend your life in engine rooms, harbor tugs first, beside your father, then merchant ships, then 30 years as a marine diesel engineer in a Hamburg yard, listening to engines that never lie. The war keeps its billet in you in one strange, specific way. You cannot sleep in silence. Total quiet snaps you awake with your heart slamming, because in the boat, silence was the sound of the sonar's pause, the held breath between pings, the question, "Are you there?" Your wife learns it in the first month and never once makes it a joke. There is a loud, old alarm clock on the shelf, and its tick fills the room. And to the end of your days, that cheap mechanical heartbeat is the sound of being safe. And you cannot abandon a card game. Any card game, anywhere. Visitors, grandchildren, holiday evenings, the hand gets finished. The family thinks it is pedantry. You have never explained it. Some rituals stop working if you say them out loud. You are 68 when you finally go to Le Beau, out on the Firth near Kiel, where the tall brick tower of the Naval Memorial stands over the water, and where they have set an actual boat up on the sand as a museum, a Type 7, your type, the steel pipe itself, open to tourists. You walk through it alone on a gray Tuesday in October. School children have written names in the visitor's book. The diesel room is smaller than you remembered, which cannot be true, and smells, faintly, forever, of oil in the sea. You stand at the engines, and you put your hand flat on the cold cylinder head, quiet hands, and you stay there so long that an attendant looks in twice. In the memorial hall, the dead of the sea war are kept in bronze and stone. The crews listed boat by boat, 30,000 of your own. And the hall does not forget the others either, the sailors of every flag that ocean took. You find your boat. 51 names in columns, alphabet holding formation. Brandt, Emile, the man who stood at your diesels. You read all 51, out loud, under your breath, because a man should not vanish twice, once from the world and once from all record of it. And because there is no other grave to visit, the Navy's own phrase for boats that never returned is auf ewige Fahrt, on eternal patrol, still out there, still underway. Then you go outside, down to the water, and you sit on a bench in the wind, and you take from your coat pocket a deck of cards so worn they feel like cloth. Not his, yours. Worn down over 40 years of finished hands, and you deal a return match for two on the slats of the bench, and you play both sides, slowly, to the end, and you lose on purpose, and you leave the winning hand lying face up, weighted with a stone, facing the sea. The Baltic works against the shore below you, patient, gray, enormous, the same water connected to all the other water, one ocean wearing different names. Somewhere very far out, a ship's engine is thudding, faint and even, carrying across the surface the way sound does at sea. You close your eyes and listen. Engines never lie. The sea in the end doesn't either. It told you exactly what it was. You just had to live long enough to hear it. The game continues, and the watch below, all 30,000 of them, are still on eternal patrol, and you are still here, on the shore of it all, listening for them.